What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA Show powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/All-NBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler. Legs, I'm in a great mood today, man. I'm excited. I feel like we've both been busy for the last week and a half. I'm kind of excited to be done with that stuff and more focused now on some basketball with 1 week to go to the trade deadline.
Couldn't agree more. And different nights you sleep differently. Last night I went to bed very, very late, but I woke up super fresh, which means the little bit of sleep I did get, which was probably about 5 hours, must have been rock solid, man. Cause I woke up, I went in, I got my son, my 3-year-old, I got him up. And sometimes, in the morning when I go in to get him, I'm like, my eyes are like half shut too, but I was like, I got a lot of pep in my step for the same reason, I think, man. And the weather, by the way, Florida, we had like 2 weeks of weather that was like in the 40s, like wind chill, some days in the 20s.
So cold, 40s.
And so finally, I cranked my pool back up again yesterday, and I was in the pool all day. I think that put me in a good mood too.
You just ruined my mood. I'm over here in Denver. I'm like, oh, it's up to 40s? Oh, man, this feels great. This is unbelievable. So we're on opposite ends of the spectrum. But we got a great show for you guys lined up today. There's a lot to get to. We're going to go deep on the Warriors. We're going to talk Warriors Thunder because the game was interesting last night. But Warriors more interesting in the crossroads they find themselves in. It feels like the last 2 years have slowly been building up to this week. So this is a huge week for the Golden State Warriors. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk the Wolves on a roll as they get a win over a sneaky rivalry that's forming in the NBA with them against the Suns. But we're going to start with some layup lines. James, give us some layup lines. Our first one for you. The Sixers beat the Lakers last night. The Lakers are both of these teams are kind of interesting in that I'm not sure how good or bad either one of them are. The Sixers obviously have had a cursed season, but the Lakers have been on a roll. One of the easier schedules in the NBA to this point. Things kind of get real for them now. And they get a win over the Kings. They have the Kings and the Lakers, but they get a win over the Kings last night, 117-104. Excuse me. And this is a couple wins in a row now for the 76ers without Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid at practice doing some handstands, doing some different things. The Sixers, you're laughing already because I'm setting the table on this quick one. But the Sixers get a win over the Kings. Kings have been on a roll.
Listen, as a guy that played in the league, and I wasn't a Hall of Famer, but I played with some Hall of Famers. There's nothing you want more out of your Hall of Fame teammates than doing handstands in practice. That tells you that they're right around the corner, man. They're right around the corner. It's like when I saw Tyronn Lue game 1 of the year, opening night, to open that new building, and we asked him about Kawhi, and he was like, yeah, he's on the Versa Climber a lot. He's been in the pool. And I said, that's exactly what you want to hear, man. Your best player is improving his swimming. That's exactly what you want to hear as an NBA player, man. I'm sorry, I had to laugh. You're like, he's in practice doing handstands. It's all good, All right, man, we'll see. Yeah. I mean, I saw an incredible number on him. Was it yesterday? Somebody posted that number about the number of games he's played to the number of games he's missed since he's been in the league. 446 games played, 400 games missed.
Yeah, I saw that too. And it was something like the money he's made on the games missed was like 100
million or something.
Yeah, something insane where you're like, man, that's
nuts, man. Wild. Hey, listen, I want him back. He's a great player. He's unguardable force. But hey, in the meantime, here they are, a little 4-game winning streak. And by the way, you said Lakers, Kings. That's true. Also, the Cavs in this 4-game win streak.
That's right.
So that's 3 really quality wins, man. And the Bulls was the 4th one.
Yeah, they are quality wins, man. And it's like, again, I've written them off mostly because I don't think Embiid will be, healthy long enough or any of those things. But you are getting some good play out of Tyrese Maxey. He's had some of his best games of the season over this last week. So, there's a little momentum there. And then if Joel Embiid comes back, look, the Nuggets are on a 3-game losing streak. They go in. That's the next, their next matchup now with the Sixers is on Friday. So, that's a winnable game suddenly for Philadelphia with or without Joel Embiid. So I'm just kind of, this is like on Mad Money or whatever. They've gone from a sell to a don't buy. They're always all the way up to don't buy if you're trying to look at their stock report. I love this story. Shams Charania is reporting that De'Aaron Fox's preferred destination is San Antonio. Not that Fox has an enormous say in this. Like, he doesn't have the most leverage, but I keep wondering, and I wondered this with Joker and his ascension, Giannis and his ascension, like, would players want to play with these great players who maybe aren't most popular or what have you. But Victor Wembanyama in his second year, and all of a sudden De'Aaron Fox, that's a good player, wants to go to San Antonio, wants to pair up with him. What do you make of that pairing? And just what do you think of the fact that a player is saying, hey, I want to go play with this young guy in his second season?
I think it's smart on De'Aaron Fox's from De'Aaron Fox's standpoint. Not saying it's smart that he wants out. I mean, that's always a tough situation for a team that's invested a lot in a guy. It's smart if you're going to pick a spot. That's the spot. Because there's no telling what Victor Wembanyama could be in 2 years. He's not ready now. And look, he's eye popping with what he does physically on the court. His numbers are most nights are really, really impressive. He's not there yet. He's not going to be there for a couple more years. He's got to get more functional strength in how he plays offensively to where you can really run an offense through him through an entire game. And like he's going to have an answer for everything. Cause I think now you can still force him. And he actually, he lost it a little bit the other night. Was it last night he got into the
No, it was last night. Yeah. And then he had comments afterwards.
It's like I've been saying all year, like I think the guy is reffed unfairly. I think because of his length. Yes, I do. I think because of his length, guys are able to get into certain parts of his body with their hands. And it's if he was a little bit shorter, it would be obvious that it's like up in his ribs and chest and arms, and it's just they're obvious fouls. I think with him, because a lot of the touch and go hand checking is allowed in this league for the most part now. They've legislated that back in most games I watch. There's a lot of that going on. He's getting hit though, because he's so long, he's getting knocked off balance a lot on the perimeter. He's handling the basketball, and there's a lot of contact that's not called on him. So I've been thinking the same thing. This was different because this was like Zubac and him got into it on a Spurs basket, and then as Wemby's running the other way, Zubac just comes up and drills him and knocks him to the ground like an intentional foul. And he got up, took exception to it. He's not ready yet to run an offense through entirely because you can still force him to spots on the court. That's a win for you. But if you're De'Aaron Fox and you're 27 years old, right, you're just now getting into the prime years of your career. Like the next 4 or 5 years are going to be the best of De'Aaron Fox's career if he stays healthy. That's a very smart place to want to go, to be around that guy. And so my question for you is, would the Spurs entertain it? Like, you got Stephon Castle, who I know they love and they just drafted, and he's a really good defender. He's a physical specimen. Would you entertain that? It's not like De'Aaron Fox is 32 years old. He's 27. So that's an interesting thing to be made public about De'Aaron Fox, with the Spurs sitting there having just drafted a guard to go with Wemby. He's not the offensive player De'Aaron Fox is. I'm not sure he'll ever be that level, but he's probably a better defender. He's bigger. He's more physical. Maybe that would be something the Kings be interested in too if they decide to move on from De'Aaron Fox. I thought that was really interesting. Smart choice for De'Aaron Fox. If that's where you want to end up, I think that might be the best place for you.
So first of all, I get the idea of a young player in Wemby and, okay, well, we can put our guys and we can open this window. I've long said that Wemby's different. Wemby is, you said he's not ready now. He's not ready to carry you to a title, as the main guy. But he's ready to get you to a title if you have the right team around him. Like, he's a good enough player that he can be a top 2 player on a championship team, in my opinion, if you build that team right. So first of all, if I'm De'Aaron Fox, De'Aaron Fox might be more business savvy than I give him credit for, because that works in his favor, what you just said, that Wemby is great, but maybe not ready. So guess what? I get to go in and be the guy a little bit for a couple years with a guy that can really cover for me. And then, hey, 2 years from now, he takes over the top spot. Okay. So be it. I got to get my fun in. So I actually like this from De'Aaron Fox, and I give him credit for it. Your question about the Spurs, though, I actually am one of these people that just says, I don't love the idea of banking on all your young players when you have one guy who's elite. When you have one guy who's elite, there's always some good player or even very good player available. And if you get De'Aaron Fox in there, young guy, you get several years with him. If it doesn't work out, you could flip him for another good player. I just don't think it's going to be hard. If you set out to say we don't have a 3-person core, we have a 1-person core, and everybody else can come and go and try to build continuity, but we can move pieces around. That's how you build around Wemby, in my opinion. Don't plan on this. This is our guy, so we're going to take it slow and waste 4 years. That's just my personal opinion.
No, I think that's fair. I think that's a good point. I think what's interesting to me about this with De'Aaron Fox is okay, the timing of all this, like they had a terrible start to the year. They've had two really good seasons the previous 2 years. They had a bad start to the year. They make a coaching change. They've been significantly better since. They look like an actual, viable threat in the West in terms of like that's gonna be a tough out. Anybody gets them, but he's had one of his worst months this month over the past 3 years. And so, okay, what's that about? His shots are down a little bit. His minutes are the same. He's shooting 41% this month. His numbers are down to 20 a game. That's not what he's used to. Like, it's just like weird. Like, you're winning though. So the timing isn't a great look for him, is my point, because it's like you've turned the season around to a great extent. And he's obviously a big part of that. I was curious to see, where is this going to top out at with this group? Because I do like their team and they started to find a rhythm here. And so let's see how this plays out. It'll be very interesting to see.
Next story we got here, Jalen Johnson is out for the year. He had surgery on his left shoulder, a labrum surgery. They are 4-7 without him, although I will say in those games, they were all good teams. Like the teams they lost to, you're talking about top-level playoff teams. So that 4-7 obviously looks terrible, and I believe it to kind of be indicative of what they'll look like without him. But it's not like they were losing to the Charlottes of the world and the Portlands or what have you. So, but the Hawks are a 9 seed, 22-25. They've now lost 6 in a row. I love this team, Legs. This is my first, I have my guys. This was one of my teams. I like them. I officially am closing the book on the Hawks. I'll still watch, we'll still talk about them probably at some point. But to me, they no longer are interesting because without Jalen Johnson, I just don't think they are interesting.
Well, I don't, this is one of those situations where I'm not going to wrestle you for your guys. You can have this one. I'm not gonna. Sometimes
I can't take Jalen Johnson. I can't take him. He's too good. He's too popular.
No, I love Jalen Johnson. Yeah, he is. You're right. We talked about this. There's rules to this, my guys stuff. Right? You're right. He's above that level to be claimed by us. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't know how you overcome it. I mean, I think what's going to happen is Trae Young has to be even more aggressive offensively. And I think typically when that happens, you're going to see his efficiency drop, and it's going to be very difficult for them to pull it off without Jalen Johnson, who's an emerging all-star in this league. I mean, you and I both love the guy. It's a terrible thing for him to have to go through now, miss half a season this early in his career. But I agree. And I think, listen, we just talked about a team that could directly benefit from that. It's the Philadelphia 76ers. Philly's sitting there right now, 19-27. Atlanta, they're 2.5 games back of the Hawks. That's one of the teams. One of those teams is going to have to come back to the fold. Now, I think Philly, you got Chicago, Atlanta, Detroit, Miami. Like those are the 4 teams in that mix. I mean, I think Philadelphia is going to surpass those teams if Embiid comes back and plays. But this is hey, you need some breaks if you're Philly. You've dealt with enough injuries, and this is going to be a bit difficult for Atlanta to overcome.
It is, and it's so funny that I'm on a cold streak on some of these things, and it's not even my fault. I called Dallas when they right at the peak of their ascension. I said, okay, they're going to be climb to the 2 seed and stay. Luka gets hurt, Kyrie gets hurt. They just have a rash of injuries. We talked about the Sixers. They're cooked. They're done. Jalen Johnson's out. Well, now they're back alive. They're back into having a great opportunity. So that's how I look at this too. And your point on Trae Young, I love, because I actually like how Trae Young played this year. When the Hawks were at their best, I thought Trae Young was at his best. And it was at a best at almost in a reduced aggressiveness because you had other guys and you had Jalen Johnson who could shoulder a lot of this load. I agree with you that Trae Young has to go back to being more aggressive, to being more of a heliocentric type player. We just know what that is with this team. We know the ceiling on that, and that's why they're unexciting. They might stay in their spot. I mean, they might hold on to a 9 seed, maybe fall to a 10 seed, something like that. But that's where we thought they would be, without the Jalen Johnson emergence. So they're another team to me that it's almost like closing the book on them. They're just not quite as interesting as we hoped they would be, and it's a bummer. It's just injury related. Last one I have for you. Adam Silver, the other day, the ideas man, the guy who brought us neon-colored courts and all of these different things, has a new idea. 10-minute quarters. We talk about shortening the length of the season. Well, maybe you don't cut out games, but can you shorten the games in the season to being just 10 minutes? He at least threw that idea out there as something he had been thinking about. What do you make of this? How would it change the game? And what do you just think of Adam Silver always coming up with ideas that are so far outside the box?
I will be the guy that champions the cause. Sign me up for 10-minute quarters.
What?
I'm all about it. All about it for a number of reasons. All right.
Wow.
Now,
this is not what I expected.
I'm going to state my reasons, and then I'm also going to give you a couple of reasons why this probably won't happen.
Yeah, well, sure.
The first reason is obvious. Okay, if you shorten the game, you should get more intensity out of those 40 minutes than you get out of 48 because there's just more urgency. It'd be just like if you shorten the season, you're going to get the same thing. Everything matters more. And so if you shorten the game, it matters more. Okay, so you're going to get more intensity. That's one. Two, it should, based on all the analytics, lead to guys not getting hurt as much, even though I don't buy into that.
Maybe.
Okay, because the numbers don't back it up. The numbers haven't backed it up to this point. That load management and all of these things and all of the stuff they've done with rest for players has led to less injuries. That's just not factual. The injuries, they seem to be more prevalent than ever. So I'm not really necessarily on board with it in the first place. But if you're telling me fewer minutes, okay, selectively that you're choosing to take advantage of now should mean better health for these guys long term. Well, then obviously the games are shorter. You're saying the same thing. So that's the other thing. You should get guys playing more. Okay, now it's shorter games. Sign me up for a 2-hour game, Adam. Okay, that first of all, from an analyst standpoint,
that's true. This is true.
Think about what that does for us and all the games we have to watch. Okay?
You know what? I'm in. You convinced me. You're right. I'm in.
You give me a 2-hour game, man. I'm all about that. Now, there's a couple of reasons why this is a difficult proposition. The first is what happens to the minutes of your rotational players, okay? Because for those guys to continue to play the same and be happy, right, and be invested, in order for them to do that, then that means the stars, even though you've shrunk the game to 40 minutes, if you base it off of what's happening now, which is the top guys are playing like 34, 35, 36 minutes most nights, okay? Right. For 3/4 of the game, basically. So now you're talking about, do those guys play 30 minutes?
Right.
In order to allow the rotational guys to still have enough of an impact? Or if they're still playing 34, far fewer minutes, the stars aren't on the court, right? And that's what the league would want. That's what fans want, but it really affects those guys. So now what happens to those guys and numbers and contracts? And then the other reason is just simply, stats, like historical stats.
That part's huge to me.
I mean, that's a big part of this. You're going to have everybody's number. 8 minutes is a significant reduction. That's a significant reduction in a game. Everybody's numbers across the board drop. So like for historical context, particularly some of these young guys that are putting up monster numbers, you do that now at this stage of their career. That's 10, 12 years for Luka Doncic, for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, of less minutes every night, less numbers, and ultimately where that puts you historically, where you rank on certain lists and all that kind of stuff. That's a tough thing to sell to the players. So I think there's reasons it won't happen, but my goodness, give me a shorter game, and the minutes matter more because the game is shorter, which means you should get better intensity. I'm all about that, man.
Yeah. There are some surefire positives. I think the historical comparisons, that part is tough. It's just tough if anytime you change the league that much and then you try to say, no new player will ever set scoring records or any of that kind of stuff. Your scoring leader might average 27 a game every year. And that's just hard to wrap your head around. It would take a long time. It would throw things off. Maybe that's not worth not doing it. Here's what I think would happen. I do think there's some good positives, like you said, quicker games and what have you. I don't even know. I don't think star players would play 36 minutes a night. I actually think they might play 32. Like their numbers would go down too, but it would just be far more intense. Because when you watch an NBA game and you catch the start of the second quarter, the intensity level is about a 3, right? And it's almost because it's such a long game, it's a marathon. So you're in that middle of the marathon. We're just at pace. Whereas if you are now in a 40-minute game, every minute of it just matters that much more. And so I think you're having your stars and your role players are just playing almost at a playoff level of intensity. That level is significantly higher. So, and then the other thing I think would happen is that coaching would become more valuable, because in a shorter game, again, a 48-minute game just has a lot of filler, a lot of just run your offense, your open offense, just kind of move the ball around.
Yes.
In a 40-minute game, every possession becomes exponentially more important. And so now maybe you're actually strategically mapping out first quarter offense, second quarter, like you're really making adjustments quicker and having more of a game plan. So I think those two things would happen that would make the game more exciting. But there is this historical context that to me is just so weird about changing your game so dramatically.
Let me comment on something, because I'm seeing some of the comments in the chat. People are talking about, they can't do that because the guys will make less money. I disagree. Here's why. I understand it's a half hour less of average viewership, right? Which means less advertising money. I get it, which ultimately is passed on to the players, right? And the league. But I disagree. If the product is better because the meat of the game is you get to it quicker,
right?
More people are going to be more interested in it. I'm telling you, now you think you don't even have to watch the first half of a game. Well, if the first half is that much shorter, you're going to get to the meat a lot faster. And I think therefore you could charge more advertising revenue to these people that want to pay for it. I think you could charge more. So I don't think that necessarily the players would make less money, because it's the same number of games, the same number of fans are filling the arenas. You really are only talking about advertising revenue. And I actually think you could charge more because the product would be better. I really believe that.
Yeah. And maybe my problem with historical context, can we really compare what we see in the NBA right now to even 15 years ago? Maybe it's already so incomparable that it's maybe it would make it more obvious how much of a fool's errand it is to try to compare players across eras. Because it really is, but it doesn't feel like it is. And maybe this change would be like, it's totally different. Every era is its own thing, and you just got to approach it that way. Let us know. So let's take a break now. But James, in the comments, let me know what the temperature is, and you can leave comments below. I'll check those as well. I'm very curious if people are in on this idea, because it's such a wacky idea. Adam Silver, the ideas man. I'm curious what people think. On the other side, we're going to be talking about the Golden State Warriors and how they find themselves at a crossroads. We'll get to that on the other side. Super Bowl 59, one game, two teams, endless possibilities. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. The Super Bowl really is the best gambling day of the entire year. You can bet on anything. If you don't have a dog in the fight, as my guy Legs does not, unfortunately, you can go ahead and hop on FanDuel, and you can get yourself something to root for by placing a couple bets and following along. It always makes the game more fun. So whether you're predicting the first touchdown, who will take home the MVP trophy, or the coin toss, that's right, you can bet on the coin toss. FanDuel makes it easy to place your bets and feel the thrill of every moment. With live betting all game long, you can jump into the action, adjust your bets, and ride the wave of excitement from kickoff to the final whistle. Plus, to make the Super Bowl even sweeter, new customers can score $200 when you make the first bet. Just place a $5 bet, and if you win, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com/AllNBA and bet with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 59. Must be 21 or older and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. You got a gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. You can call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Also want to tell you guys about Shady Rays. Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized sunglasses that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your style. I go with Navigators and Aviators. They probably have a style in your team's favorite colors. So exclusively for our listeners, you go to Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. You head to shadyrays.com and use our promo code AC35. It always helps us out, and it helps you out because you save 35% off of polarized sunglasses, but it also lets them know you're listening to the show, you like the show, and you're supporting their partners. AC35 for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades, rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. All right, we got a poll going. We'll check back on that here after we talk about the Warriors. But the Warriors get a win over the number one in the Western Conference, Oklahoma City Thunder, 116-109. And they did it without Draymond Green, without Jonathan Kuminga. Wasn't the best game from Steph Curry. He started slow, but it was a heck of a close. And I was sitting there last night thinking it was just a little mini close where he hits a couple threes in a row, in the clutch. Steph, to me, is still, when he's on a heater, it's still number one. It's still the most fun thing to watch. Steph Curry making threes in the pressure cooker, because there's still a sense of inevitability, even with this shorthanded roster. That's what stood out to me in this game, Legs. But what stood out to you?
Totally agree with that. Curry did have a rough start. And, you mentioned like how fun it is to watch him when he does cook a little bit, even if it's shorter bursts. And it seems like those happen less frequently than they have in the past. But it's still capable at any time. And I just called a game like less than 2 weeks ago when he did that to Minnesota with the way he closed the game and hit the big three of the game to win the game. He does it again last night. And I thought the shot he hit, and I'm going to get the play-by-play down right here, minute 52 left. That was the big one because they had built a solid lead. They really dominated the third quarter. They built a solid lead halfway through the fourth. They're in total control. OKC, as you know they're going to do, makes a run. They cut it to 3. 2 minutes to go. And now it looks like Golden State's in trouble because you know what Oklahoma City's defense is capable of in those situations, just clamping down. And Curry comes down and hits a 30-footer to put them up 6. It was the biggest shot in the game. It really allowed everybody in the building to sort of calm down. And then they were able to hold on, man. So great win for them. And like every win now for Golden State's a great win. Especially when you look at the fact, Adam, they get Podziemski's back, and Podziemski, is very, very important to them. But they don't have Draymond Green in this game. They don't have Kuminga in this game. Like, you're talking about two of their main physical presence up front. Draymond positionally does that and just toughness, and then Kuminga gives them that that wing with the athleticism and the reach and all that. And they don't have either one of those guys, and they still were able to beat this team. They limited Oklahoma City's transition, only held them to 5 fast break points. So they did not get anything early offense. That gives you a chance in this league. Make a team play against your half-court defense, you have a chance. And that's what Golden State really did. They turned the ball over, but they didn't get hammered with points off turnovers. OKC's number one in the league in that category, 23 points a night. I think they had like 17 in this game, or 16.
Right.
So you hold them below average there. You don't give up anything in transition. You give your team a chance. And when you've got a player as great as Steph Curry who can make some magic happen late in the game, you get maybe their best win of the year. Shorthanded to beat that team and to operate the way you had to offensively in the second half. Impressive win for Golden State. And like I said, every one of these is big. They're hanging on, man. They're just outside the play-in, but they're so bunched together. A hot streak for any of those teams could vault you from 11th to 7th, 8th pretty quickly. So this was a really good win for the Warriors.
The Warriors, I mean, they have a lot of professionals on that team. I love Gary Payton II. We'll talk about him in a second. Kevon Looney, even guys like Kyle Anderson. These are guys that, they can understand what's important to win a game. They can't always do it, right? They can't always make their shots or get the stops that they need. But they at least understand, yes, we got to limit transition. We got to limit their opportunities on second chance and all these different things. And so they can pull off the game plan. And for the Thunder, the game plan, you can't stop Shai. He's on a ridiculous heater. We should probably give him a little bit of love here in a second, but 52 points in this one after scoring 54 earlier in the week. But you get 52 from him, 26 from J-Dub, 17 from Isaiah Joe. No one else on the Thunder had more than 4 points. This doesn't happen often, but if you're a Thunder fan, it is your concern that you get into a playoff series and teams say, hey, your success largely depends on all those role players making shots. And if they don't, what happens? And that's what happened in this game. Not only did they not make shots, 23% from the three-point line as a team, but they didn't score more than 4 points outside of those 3 guys. So I mean, is that a concern, or is that just it's 82 games? Every team's going to have 4 or 5 of these.
No, look, it's not like it's a pattern, but to your point, it's the one thing you look at and say, if they become too Shai centric offensively, does that benefit their opponent? I think it does, because one of the things, look, he can get his whenever he wants, and he's going to be at 30, right around 30 every single night that he has to play normal minutes. He's going to get there because he's too unstoppable offensively. But when he feels like, this team outside of him in this game, they go 7 for 33 from the three. When he starts to feel like guys aren't stringing together any shots, you can see the way he flips the switch, and then he's just going to go eat. When that happens, I think that you can at least defend them. When they have guys making shots all over the floor and the ball is getting into the paint, moving around and making you chase it a little bit, knowing you've always got this sledgehammer in Shai, who can get a shot off whenever he wants, a good one for himself. When you're playing that way, knowing that's in your pocket anytime you need to go there, but that's not what you have to do, that's when they're almost impossible to beat, because you stack that on top of what they could do to you defensively. This game felt like it was just a lot. Shai. Jalen took a good number of shots, had a decent game too, but it felt so Shai heavy that you're like, okay, this is not differentiating them anymore and making them really almost impossible to guard. And they've had some nights like that, not many, but if they have one or two of those in a series, when we get to when it really matters, that could be a difference against whoever they're going to get in the second round, the third round. So it is something to watch. And, he's so incredibly talented as a scorer. But if they just go down that road too much on a given night, I think it ultimately makes them at least guardable. And most nights I don't feel like they are, but they certainly were last night. And Golden State did what they had to do coming out of the locker room. They reestablished themselves, reestablished control of the game, and then basically held on at the end.
With what you saw last night, because Shai took 29 shots, because what you said was very interesting. If they're going to rely on him this much, is it a good thing long term? I mean, obviously he can handle it. He was very efficient in his 52 points last night, 16 of 29, and he drew 21 fouls. So he has even more shooting possessions than the 29. I don't know what the final number is, but you can assume it was something like 35, 36. So for him to take that much, even as good as he is, it might be one of those things where it's good. It's actually negative in aggregate because, things are going to go bad. It's hard to blame the player that scored and was efficient because the guys who didn't shoot well. But I do think there is something to that there's just there's a delicate spiritual balance in basketball where it can go too far for a player, and Shai's having this incredible month. But your point is maybe it's wrong. So do you think this is a Shai thing that he can look around and say, all right, I got to find ways for Hartenstein, Dort, Cason Wallace, for them to get a little bit more comfortable, even if I can score 52.
Yeah, I think so. And I think even his comments after the game, when he basically, the questions come at you, you're lauded for having such a big night. And he wanted none of that. Not happy, not satisfied. This isn't the way I want to play. This isn't good for our team. I do think those conversations are had. I think him watching film, he's going to, some of it is just, hey, man, guys start off slow. They're not making shots. Maybe he feels like, okay, I'm going to keep us in this right now, keep our head above water, keep us cooking. I'm feeling it. I'm just going to go. I don't think that ultimately that makes you a team that can win a title playing that way. And I think he realizes that. So I do think the adjustments will be made, are made. 21 assists, really low number for that team. So I do think that those adjustments will be made. I look at last night in particular. When they're really good, think about the nights you've watched Oklahoma City this year, and you're just like blown away by how good they are. You're like, wow. It's usually you're feeling the weight of Cason Wallace, Aaron Wiggins,
right,
Lou Dort, right? Hartenstein, who missed uncharacteristically missed like a lot of those little push shots last night. He usually converts all of them. It feels like, he wasn't hitting that shot last night. So had a great night on the boards and gave you his normal effort. He just didn't finish. Dort, Wallace, Wiggins, total non-factors in the game offensively. When you watch OKC, you're always going to get, great game out of Shai. Jalen Williams usually very, very good. But those other guys have these moments, man, these splashy moments throughout the game where you're like, man, how are you supposed to deal with all that? They didn't have any of that last night. So when they watch the film back, they'll see it. There's got to be a way to get, number one, Dort needs more than 4 shots if he's going to start, and, get him into a little bit of a rhythm. I think Shai is going to process all that, figure out as a team, they've got to figure out the way to have that great balance, knowing that they have this guy that at any time, if he needs to, can go string together 10 points. And if that's what the situation, but that's not when they are at their best.
You mentioned Hartenstein, and you are right that he has been a very efficient player, but I've watched him long enough. He's my guy. I love Hartenstein. But he does miss some bunnies, especially if you can get physical with him and force him just an extra foot outside. Like, he's a guy that right around the rim, little touch shots, he could be great, but you get him to 7 feet instead of 5. And now he's doing that little push floater, and he just has a tendency to fall out of rhythm on those in a way that can really hurt you. But the real Hartenstein, and again, I love him. 4 points, 18 rebounds, 6 assists, and he's a player I've always believed in. But one trait he has that I swear he's the Michael Jordan of is fouling a guy on an obvious, reckless foul at the absolute worst moment. And he had one last night where it was an offensive rebound he went for, where he just knocked the guy over in the back and then looks at the ref like, what did I do? What did I do? You recklessly ran over a guy who had position on you. And on the very next play, he got a poster dunk from Gary Payton. Man. And it was those two plays, like, the game ended right then because it was such an a horrible moment for a foul. And then to follow it up by getting posterized was like, yep, there it is. And I love Hartenstein, but I feel like he is one of those guys that is prone to those moments.
I totally agree with that. And look, the play, by the way, I'm glad you mentioned, I wanted to get that in, the Gary Payton dunk, man. If you didn't see it, you need to check out the highlight. It's one of the best dunks I've seen this year because he's a small guy. And It was one of those plays, and it was late, it mattered. And Hartenstein went to help on penetration. And then by the time he turned around, the ball was dropped off to Payton, who was streaking in from the opposite corner, caught it. And Hartenstein still got there in plenty of time to matter.
Well.
And Gary Payton just jumped in his left hand, and he just went up, and then he just cocked it back to give him a little bit more elevation and just pounded it on Hartenstein at a very important time in the game. It was really one of those games that you're not recovering from because of the eruption and the crowd and everything else and the timing of it. Pretty impressive. But no, I agree with what you said about Hartenstein. It's funny. I was laughing because I'm picturing now, as you're describing these types of plays, he does seem to find himself involved in situations like that far too often.
It's like 3-point game, 2 minutes to go. We need a good possession. Oh, clear shove in the back or moving screen that was obvious. And it's like, hey, man, no mistakes on those plays because they compound. And then to get followed up by a poster was incredible. And so now I want to move back over to the Warriors here because I love Gary Payton. He's actually another one of the guys I've just have always loved, a true professional. But the Warriors are at a crossroads right now. They've got 2 more home games, Phoenix and Orlando. Both should be difficult, especially for the Warriors, who every game is difficult for them. But those are 2 very tough teams. And then you go on a 7-game road trip that will take you through the trade deadline and through the All-Star break. So a couple games here at home to try to right the ship. But when you look at their roster, I like it. When they was fully healthy, I like their intensity. A lot of professionals can play some defense, some young pieces you weren't sure fit, but I like the potential of it. They're so desperate now outside of the playoff window, and the trade pieces now are all compromises. Do you trade Andrew Wiggins? Do you trade Gary Payton, Kevon Looney? I've even seen people suggest trading Draymond Green and making something that desperate. And to be honest with you, nothing should be off of the table because they are a team that it's decision time on where they're going. So when you look at that, how desperate should they act? And what type of swings do you think they should make right now?
Yeah, despite the talk from, Steve Kerr and Curry and Draymond earlier, we talked about this when they basically made the point they didn't want the organization to do anything that was going to be disadvantageous long-term just to win now. I mean, I disagree with the premise. Steph Curry's on your roster. You don't know how much longer this is going to last. You don't know how many more seasons he has. I mean, even this year, just statistically and the impact he's had, I mean, this would be considered a down year by his standards. So you don't know, man. Guards get north of that 35 range. It's tough when you're a perimeter shot maker. It's just way harder. than if you're a big or if you're a guy that's like just going to overwhelm you physically and athletically, and they can adapt their game and still play through all that. Curry's going to play one way, and it gets harder the older you get to be super efficient. So you don't know how much longer this lasts with Steph Curry. It's your responsibility organizationally to do everything you can. And based on looking at their roster, there's a reason that Steve Kerr at the beginning of the year said, I'm playing 12 guys. Do you think that's just because he's like, man, I got 12 incredible pieces and I got to find time for all of them? No, it's because of the opposite. He's like, no, we've got Curry and then like everybody else. So I don't know who's who. So everybody's going to get a chance here. That's basically what he said. That's not a ringing endorsement of your roster. So my point is they've got a lot of pieces that I think are replaceable. So that's if you're that organization, you're Mike Dunleavy Jr., yes, you're looking, man. You're scouring on a daily basis. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean they pull the trigger on anything. They've had some guys miss a lot of time. Podziemski missed time. Kuminga's missed a bunch of time. Draymond's been out. They picked up Schroeder not that long ago. He's playing better now. Like, he didn't look comfortable at all the first 5-6 games. He's playing better. So that needs more time to marinate. I think when you look at it all, they might look at it and say, you know what, we really haven't had. Look at us at the beginning of the year when we kind of had our team out there. We were 10-3, top 5 defense and offense. Then just injuries started mounting up, all kinds of guys missing time, and Curry's even missed time. So you get all that. Maybe they're looking at it like, hey, man, it's going to get better for us after the All-Star break. I kind of like what we were at the beginning of the year. I think we can get back there. And we don't need to do anything that's just not obviously going to make us better. And so, but I do think they have to look. They have to pick up the phone, and they've got to be looking actively, every team in the league, see who's available, see what's available, see if it makes sense for your team. And there's nobody, to your point, nobody outside of Steph Curry is untouchable.
Yeah. Well, I think Andus Brown in the chat has a great point here, which is problem is if the Warriors make a big move, they'll have to ship out players that they need. I agree with this. And first of all, need is doing some work here because when you're the 11 seed, you need a lot of things, not just what your good players are bringing you. But to me, their most tradable players are the 3 I mentioned: Andrew Wiggins, Gary Payton, Kevon Looney. Can you trade Moses Moody for something of value? Can you trade Kuminga, like those types of guys? I think those are the guys that are most expendable. But if you're talking about getting real value, Andrew Wiggins is both the contract and somebody that can be a two-way player, a two-way wing that every team needs. So Andrew Wiggins, Gary Payton, and Kevon Looney, I look at it and I go, first of all, would you trade those 3? And if so, you're trading them for a star player, a Zach LaVine, a Jimmy Butler. You're trying to go out and get something like that, and you're getting star power, but you lost your two-way guys or your guys that did a lot of your dirty work. So of those 3 guys, would you move them? And how would it affect your team if you lose your good role players?
Yeah, man. I don't know that I'm going to differentiate from any of those guys. Look, I think you could pick up something that could end up being of greater value to you for any of those players. I don't know that they've looked at any of those guys either as ascending, obviously, on the level they want them to be, envisioning what they could possibly be 2 years from now. And that includes Kuminga, by the way. Kuminga made a big strides a year ago. I don't know if there's another level for him. I really don't, man. I don't know if he's really ever going to add the things he needs to add as a wing in this league to go to another level. So maybe now okay, this is the ceiling for Jonathan Kuminga. That could be your most tantalizing trade option, because somebody might look at that and say, you know what? We need that. Like, we don't have that. An athletic wing that can run and score. I mean, I think there are people that question whether he's enough of a grinder. That's something you got to think about at his age. Do you want to give up something of value that could go help Golden State now for a guy that I don't know if we can get the most out of him? Is he going to be the first guy in the weight room? Is he going to be the guy that's there after practice, diligently working on a consistency with his 3-point shooting and his handle? That doesn't sound like the vibe around him. So that could be, in some ways limiting for him. I like Moody a lot, but there's a reason that Moody has a hard time consistently staying in their prominent rotation. Yeah. It's weird. Like he'll play well for 4 or 5 games. It looks like he's breaking out a little bit. Then he'll struggle for a couple, and then his minutes will go cut for the next 4. That's been his pattern. So that I don't know that I don't know where that's going with him either. It didn't evolve the way I thought it would. And this included Wiseman was there at the time. Wiseman, Kuminga, Moody, you remember? After they won the championship, you're like, this is the next wave. They're going to be able to keep this going.
2 timelines, yeah.
Yeah, and it hasn't really panned out that way. So listen, you got Curry on your roster, man. You gotta think things through. You gotta be willing to take a little bit more of a risk because they don't have the next guy on their roster to hand this off to anyway. That guy's not there. He's not.
The ride's over when it's over. The ride's over when it's over, and you have to operate. You have to operate that way.
It's a full rebuild after Steph Curry. A full rebuild. So if that's the case, hell, it's worth the risk now. It's worth the risk. Throw the dice, see what happens.
So if you're getting rid of, like I said, these are players that actually provide. Ideally, you add a star player, but you keep your Wiggins and your Gary Paytons because they fill the gaps around stars. But those are the guys I think you would have to trade. So if you're moving on from those guys we mentioned, Jimmy Butler or Zach LaVine, which one makes the most sense? They're very different approaches if you're Golden State, but which one would you go for if you could get them for that package?
Man, oh man, that's a tough one. I mean, Butler's just toughness in a playoff environment is hard to like turn away from. And that's what you're trying to do. And it's going to be a tough road, even if you get in. I think LaVine stylistically fits better without question. Right. The way that he plays and the way their offense operates at its best, that lends itself more to Zach LaVine than Jimmy Butler. But Jimmy Butler has this other element to him on the other end of the floor. And like, getting to the line, they need that as part of their offense. That might be ultimately the way you would go because it's closer to like getting you there now, which is what it's all about with Curry. But LaVine fits better.
Yeah. I'd be curious. I think it's way more fun with LaVine. I want to see what he looks like because right now, even he can be a slower decision maker. And I would just love to see what he looks like when the half court offense speeds up because he has the tools to be elite in that and hitting the gaps when the ball swings to him, off of Steph Curry's gravity. That would be exciting for me to see if he could evolve into that. Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green together in a playoff series. Just go ahead. One of the boxes you have to check in a playoff series is who's the tougher team. Give me Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green. You check that box at least. I don't know if it'll work everywhere else, but you're going to be the toughest team in every playoff series. And I just would love to see that level of intensity around Steph. We'll see what they do. And I'm curious what people think. But to me, I just look at the Warriors and I go, since the championship run in 2022, as impressive as it was, they've been on a collision course for next Thursday. They've been on a collision course they have to make a move. And I just think it's going to happen. And I don't even think it's the right time. I just think it's the last time. It's their last chance to kind of make the move. Real quickly, let's get into our other game. I did not watch this one. I watched Nuggets-Knicks, of course, last night, covering that for my beat, and then watched this one. So I have questions for you. The Wolves got the win over the Suns, 121-113. And I know, read up about this game, watch the highlights. These two teams have a bit of a rivalry going. And I think you have a rivalry with any team that beats the brakes off of you in a playoff series. When it's a sweep or a 5-game, there's a little animosity there. These two seem to have that, and the Wolves seem to have their number. No Nas, no Dante, and yet they still were able to hold the Suns to 18 in the third quarter and get the win. So what stood out to you about this game, and do you agree about the rivalry part? I mean, air quotes, rivalry.
No, I agree. There's not many matchups. I don't even know if we call them rivalries anymore. It's almost like intriguing matchups is the way I would describe it now for some reason or another. It could be an individual matchup. It could be there's something in the water between these teams because I definitely agree with you. And you saw it last night. And it's like once Minnesota got some separation in the fourth quarter, because this game was tied in the late third quarter, and Minnesota dominated the fourth quarter. And once they strung together some threes. Nickeil Alexander-Walker hit back-to-back threes, and Julius Randle played very well in this game, and they got separation. They were talking and laughing and enjoying themselves, right, on Phoenix's home floor. And do we remember what happened last year? Right? They swept them. They swept them.
Easy, too.
And it was easy and it was intense, and they talked to him the entire time. And Anthony Edwards had these incredible dunks in that series where he was strutting and flexing, and they did it again to him last night. And then the very end of the game, there actually was some words, chippiness is this wasn't like Bulls Knicks, right, of the 90s. Okay. But there was, it's clear that they get under their skin, the Suns. And they've lost now, by the way. It's just 0-2 this year. That's 6 straight, right?
Yeah.
So there's something to it. And so I agree. I'm more interested now in when these two teams play. And that's why going into last night, I texted you about this game. That was the main reason. There's something in the sauce between these two teams. They don't like each other. And the Timberwolves really don't like Devin Booker. Okay. That's obvious to me. And that came to the fore last night. And then Jaden McDaniels and Booker got into it. Durant got into it, but technicals were handed out. McDaniels got ejected. All this, by the way, after the game was over. The game was over. It was like a minute to go, less than that. And it got to that point. So we've been building for a while. I agree with you, man. There's something there, something to admire. But the other takeaway for this, besides that, is Julius Randle is starting to play better. Julius Randle is starting to fit better. They're starting to play better as a team, I feel like. And it's interesting because remember, this is a conference finalist. And they've got pretty much all of that core back. They made the big trade. I know that. And Randall's, we've been evaluating that all year. Cat's been incredible in New York. Randle, struggling to fit in. He seems to be getting more comfortable. And by the way, getting Dillingham back is important, man. Dillingham
I agree.
is very talented. He is super talented. He gives you a burst and an energy, and the crowd loves him already in Minnesota. So they didn't have him. DiVincenzo, is a guy that's very important to them. He just had gotten hot when he got hurt. I think the best days are coming for Minnesota, man. So keep an eye on them. And this was a good win for them. They've won 4 straight: Dallas, Denver, Atlanta, Phoenix. That's a nice 4-game winning.
It's good ones. Yep. It's a good little portfolio there. I like your point about Julius Randle. Here's my note on Minnesota from when I watched him. And like I said, I didn't see this game, but Jaden McDaniels goes 2 of 3. Nickeil Alexander-Walker goes 5 of 10. Those two are such an inflection point because offense is their issue, even though they've been very good offensively over this last, I think, 10 games or so. I think they're number 7 in offense. So it's coming together. But those guys making shots are so huge for him. And so then you wonder, how do I get them more shot? Like, how do I make it more likely that they'll hit shots? And I do think Rob Dillingham is one piece to this. He played 15 minutes last night, only had 8 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists. So it wasn't like he was lighting the world on fire. But I do feel like it gives them another just more gravity on the court, which opens everything else up and makes the game easier. Like, even if he's not going off, he makes the texture of their combinations and their rotations make a lot more sense. And I think that was Tim Conley's vision, because the other side of that is you're talking about a guy who's too tiny to be an effective defender, but there's faith that your team is good defensively to cover for him. And it's working out like that over this last, I think it's 7 games since he's come back. Yeah, they're 5-2. He's been a plus in 5 of the 7 games. 1, he was a -2 and a 17-point win. So basically an even. So I look at Rob Dillingham and I actually think there is something to it, that he might be the key to making Randle, McDaniels, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker all make sense.
Well, listen, we didn't get much of a chance to talk about the beatdown Minnesota put on Denver last week when I called that game. But I saw Dillingham this summer in Vegas. I'm super impressed, but it's Vegas. You got to keep it all in context. So this was my first time seeing him live in an NBA game. And I was so impressed with his quickness. I mean, this is a league full of very quick guys. And then you've got Rob Dillingham, who's out there, and everything he's doing just looks faster and quicker than everybody else on the court. So that is a major component, getting him back and into the rotation. And you could tell Chris Finch, we were talking to him, I called another game, he was out still, and you could see how excited he was to get him back. By the way, another guy he mentioned in the last interview I did with Chris Finch was Terrence Shannon Jr., who I was surprised. Like, I loved him, and he was incredible in Vegas. He was dominant in Vegas. He's been hurt, and he was so excited to get him back. His exact word was, he is a very intriguing player. And that's maybe another rotational piece for them. So I'm liking what I'm seeing out of Minnesota right now. Anthony Edwards' intensity and leadership has been there the entire time. They just had to figure out a way to blend together better, and they're starting to do that, and they're shorthanded. They're not even at full strength.
I'm interested in the Timberwolves. 26-21. The West is so hilarious, man. A week ago, the Nuggets looked like they were in the rise, beating up a bunch of bad teams. Lost 3 in a row now, mostly against good teams. Timberwolves struggling. Now they got it back and are rolling. It's just all these teams. The Sacramento Kings were on that heater. Now they're kind of struggling. It's just no team has. several teams have been good for these periods of time that make you think they're on the ascension, and then they fall off. And I wonder if it's going to be like this all the way to the finish line, where it's just teams going up and down, except for, of course, the Houston Rockets.
Well,
and
it's going to be like that, until you get to those games after the break, 25 games, man, and the level of intensity, it's so apparent. Even the first game you watch after the All-Star break, the level of importance and desperation, it's just totally different. And it could be even greater, Adam, if they, you know what, forget 10-minute quarters. Let's go 8-minute quarters. Let's go like high school basketball. And let's just go, man, like gladiator style. Let's go.
6-minute abs. You can't even get a workout in 6 minutes. What's the shortest we could do? Hey, by the way, the chat's with me, Legs, not with you. We have 83% of our votes that come in say no, leave the quarters at 12 minutes. So most people, look at that, only 17% are in favor of shortening it. I'm not surprised by that one. People don't like that kind of change. They don't like.
You know why that is? There's one reason for that. That's because everybody's paying for League Pass, and they know they're not going to get a reduction in their rate, despite the fact the game is shorter. So they want the bang for their buck. I'm with you.
I'll tell you what you would. Another thing we didn't even talk about. There would be fewer blowouts, because nothing worse right now than when a game is just in the last 7, 8, 9 minutes and it's 20 points. You shorten the game, there's less chance for a team to go on a crazy run like that. So that might be one benefit of it. We got a couple super chats to get out of here. What do we got? Psycho Blue, the homie, he says, B-Ball Cthulhu thinks as long as you still have Steph playing at this level, you can afford to swing on another co-star with how close the West is. Anything can happen. He's definitely right about the second part. It's not like they have to go through a dozen juggernauts to get there. Every team is beatable outside. I mean, right now, the Thunder look mostly unbeatable, but they beat them last night, and they're young. Every other team has their own flaws. So I do think that will texture this deadline, as a lot of teams have to feel like, hey, nobody's that good out there. So who knows? A move can make it work. What do you think?
Totally agree. And I think the point I made earlier is the biggest one for me with the Warriors. They don't have the next iteration of the Warriors on their roster. They don't have it. They don't have it. This dries up. That well dries up when Steph Curry waves to the crowd for the last time as he walks off the court. So yes, swing for the fences. I agree, because even their picks aren't going to be good enough to turn this thing around. And even if they had a top pick or something, that even takes time. So no, go do whatever you have to do to package it together and try to get the best talent you can to put next to Steph Curry and continue to try to make one more run at this thing.
Look at this comment, Legs. You didn't factor it in. 10-minute quarters means less Legler. He wants to keep it at 12 because he likes hearing Tim Legler on the mic for 48 minutes.
That's actually maybe the best point I've heard. And actually now I might reconsider this, because I'm thinking ESPN might actually reduce my contract. They might come to me and say, actually you're only on the air for 2 hours instead of 2.5, man. So per word, I'm paid per word.
There you go. Daniel Cini says, OKC fan, no game that doesn't feature Chet Holmgren for OKC doesn't matter to me. Hearing he'll be back around All-Star break, no need for overreaction to this. I don't think there's need for overreaction to it, even if they had him. Teams lose games. Nobody goes undefeated throughout the season.
Nobody's overreacting to it. We're just saying the only point we made, I think the big overreaching point about Oklahoma City was this. If they become too Shai-centric on given nights offensively, it helps the defense. So whether that's his reaction to guys not making shots and that's why it happens, or he comes out some nights super aggressive and he's feeling it, I'm not saying that he never thinks about the MVP. I don't think it's a driving thing in his head, but I mean, some people think he's the front runner right now. He wants to come out and he wants to have some of these eye-popping performances, but I think that helps the opponent when you can focus in a little bit more on his shot making, and those other role players I mentioned are not hurting you.
Yeah. There's also, you can hit that outro music. There's also nothing I hate more than the don't read into this game, it doesn't matter. We can do that for every game. It's the problem with the NBA. We have to treat them like they matter. Oftentimes things matter and we don't really know, but I hate the idea of that loss doesn't matter. That win doesn't matter. Nothing matters, actually. It's just the playoffs. We love watching hoops. We love talking about it. We love analyzing it. We hope you guys enjoy listening to us talk about it. If you do, and you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Help us out. We got to get we're almost at 30,000 subs for this. We got to get there. Help us grow it. Tell your friends about it. Tweet it out on social media. We believe in our show, and we hope you guys are watching because you enjoyed as well. Hit that like button. We'll see you about it tomorrow.
city like the mayor.